come and have a seat, Nicola. Come and join us. So first of all, Nicola, absolutely lovely to finally meet you in person. We've had lots of conversations, probably over the last couple of years here and there, understanding a little bit more about what it is that you do. So would you be able to start by just giving us a brief introduction to your role and what the Productivity Institute is?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, Iona. So my name's Nicola Pike and I'm the Engagement and Impact Director for the Productivity Institute, which is based here in Manchester, but it's a national institute. It was set up in 2020, September 2020, and it's the largest investment by the ESRC, part of UKRI. And the reason why it's the largest investment just shows how important they place on productivity. So why is productivity important? Well, it is a really good indicator of how we're performing as a country, as firms, as regions, and as individuals in those firms. And improved productivity helps to improve the standard of living. In terms of me personally, my background for a long time was in professional and financial services marketing, and then I moved to academia to work with academics to help them to promote their work and work with businesses. And that's really important. This is a partnership. It's not just academics, it's working in partnership with businesses and policymakers because they're really important as far as this is concerned.
Incredible, and it's one of the things we're so fortunate in Manchester and Greater Manchester region that we've got these phenomenal universities that work really closely with industry. Now, particularly this week, we've seen the spring statement come out, productivity again kind of hitting the headlines. The UK is lagging behind, the north of England's lagging behind. Why is it? Are we just really lazy, or what is driving that lack of productivity that we're seeing?
No, absolutely not. Although, it's only, in terms of productivity performance, the slowdown of productivity is a global phenomenon, first of all. However, as the UK, we have been slower than most other comparative countries, so that's an issue. And in terms of the UK, the only region to outperform the UK average is London and the South East. So it is a national problem, but you look at within regions, there are pockets. Say, for example, we're here in Manchester today, part of the Northwest. There are some really good pockets of productivity in the Northwest. So Cheshire East, for example, is a high productivity area, but we have low pockets of productivity. And it's really important. We want to spread that prosperity and spread that wealth and to bring everyone up with us, don't we? So it's really important that we do that. And, London and the South East there are two words that I've learned since I've been working with these, mainly economists, but it's interdisciplinary. So lots of management academics, we've got engineers, but two words I've picked up in the last 18 months, agglomeration and spillover. And that's what we don't have here. And it's what we don't have in cities outside of London. And it's what comparative countries do have. They have that spillover effect and the critical mass at the agglomeration from their cities that spills out into the regions. And we don't have that. And that's what we need to work on and what we need to understand. We know some of the answers, we guess on some of the answers, and we don't know some of the answers. So this is why we're doing all of this research and why it's important.
Yeah, it's such an exciting time that we can start to see, we've seen these trends, we can see some of these things happening, but actually it's by working with businesses that we're going to start to unpick and discover a little bit more. So people are clearly key in productivity. Productive people are going to lead to more productive organisations. So what role does the workforce play, and what role does managers and the type of management play in making organisations as productive as possible?
So you're right, because there are clearly levers that the government and institutions have that play their part, and they're really, really important. But businesses can play their part too. And I would say today, we're going through a bit of a crisis at the moment, aren't we? Prices are going up, costs are going up.
Like several crises at any one time.
It's a lot to deal with, and we will continue to do so. But productive companies are better to weather the storm. And it's having that short-term, medium, long-term planning attitude that really makes the difference. And, a business owner today has got a choice. They can either, to weather the storm of increasing costs, they can put prices up and pass that on to the customer, which isn't great for inflation, isn't it? It doesn't help us all in the UK. The other thing that they could choose to do is to improve productivity. So they could look within their company, they could look at the skills of their workforce. Can they improve the skills of their workforce so that they can produce more? Can they invest in technology? Can they become innovative? Can they improve communication amongst the silos within their company to improve productivity? And can they improve the management skills of their workforce? Because management skills have definitely shown to be a big factor in terms of being a non-productive or a productive company.
Fantastic. And I'm sure the answer is a very complicated pile of research. But if we had to distill down a couple of things where you say this is what good management skills look like, here's a couple of things that actually, if you're doing this really well as a management structure or as individual managers, would likely to be seen more productive. What kind of things do we look for?
Well, I think training is really important. We have so many accidental managers in the UK, and we were having a chat about this at the workshop at lunchtime. So many people focus their efforts on the technical skills and training, and management is seen as an afterthought. And there's lots of research out there that shows that those companies that invest as much in management training are much more productive. Germany and the USA come out quite highly in terms of the country rankings. So that's something that needs to happen. It's the actual training, and that needs to be embedded across the company as well, and having consistent, whether it's performance management, key performance indicators, and it'll depend on the actual company itself. But that training is really, really important.
Absolutely, and as you say, it's one of those things that we see it over and over again in different industries, that the industry training's there, and then you suddenly have these people who've become managers but haven't got through that training and support. And one of the things that you mentioned there, which is obviously goes hand in hand with productivity, is innovation. It feels like every single company in the world now will say that they're innovating and that they're doing that really, really well. But how do we go about creating that continuous innovation and creating a culture that doesn't just shout out for you've innovated and we've made loads of money and that's great, but actually allows the innovations that might not get there, and creating a culture that enables us to try and fail?
Well, it needs to happen across the country, across the country and also across the company. It needs to be embedded in everyone, and not just a case of, oh, we've done that, we'll sit back and relax. It's constant innovation, and it doesn't have to be big innovation either. You may innovate and develop a new product or service, but actually be a magpie, go and steal other ideas and adapt and evolve. And we've done that, haven't we, over the pandemic? How many of us, used Zoom before the pandemic? And we adapted and we evolved, and that needs to be continuous. We're going through, my managing director, Bart van Ark, always says that we are going through the biggest mass experiment of workplace employees ever in our lifetime with this hybrid working. Because, this building is fabulous. I'd love to come and work here. And I work in a really nice building. But I imagine employees still want to have some of the time at home as well and not have the commute. And it's that balance, isn't it? And so as a manager, you've got to learn how to adapt and innovate and make that work for your whole team and for your company. So it's making sure that that's embedded. The other thing is maker time versus manager time. You've got to make time to think about innovation as well, haven't you? That's really important.
Yeah, it's not just going to happen accidentally. And yeah, it's been really, really interesting for us. So Elevate is based here in this building most of the time, and we're coming in and out, and we're seeing those constantly changing patterns of how the space is being used and when's busy and when's quiet. Trying to manage that at scale, it does require us all to be able to adapt. But it also throws up some real questions about communication and collaboration, which I know you've also mentioned as kind of being key elements here in productivity. So what have we perhaps learned from this mass experiment of the last 2 years about how to better communicate and collaborate with each other?
It's just shown us how important it is, but we can adapt and evolve, and getting together in person is really important, but also learning how to best use those systems and tools online for the virtual workspace is important as well, and adapting as well. So this week I ran a brainstorming session online for the first time, and we didn't know if it was going to work. We thought, oh, actually, no, we need to be in the room. We need to have the old Post-it notes, the whiteboards, everyone working. What we actually did was get a Google Docs open, and everyone had anonymous access. They were a blue cheetah or a pink fish or a yellow star, and they could all put in, as they would, on the sticky Post-it notes around a room, and it worked brilliantly. And some people even said that they preferred it because they could see and they could digest and work at their own pace as well for this brainstorming session. So it's using tools in different ways to understand how best can you communicate. But again, these are all interlinked, aren't they? How to manage that, managing the communication, constantly reevaluating, constantly innovating, but making sure that that communication and collaboration does happen, and not just within your organisation. It's really important to communicate with your supply chains and your customers as well.
And how have we found that productivity? How does it impact those supply chains and those other relationships? Because if we kind of, as an organisation, like, we're going to start getting really good at all of this stuff and do it well, how can you work with your supply chain, with your customers to kind of explain what you're doing and what you might be changing and get them to buy into those changes?
Well, I think this is all part of the ecosystem that Chris was talking about at the first session this morning. You know, that's really important. We all work together and we all learn from one another, don't we? And we can all bring one another up together and get that spillover that we want. So actually, I don't see that as a bad thing, and we can learn from our supply chains as well, and help them become more productive, and then everyone wins.
Fantastic. A lovely, positive way to start rounding things off there. What I'd really like from you, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here because I haven't asked you in advance this, but I'd just be really interested to know, are there examples here of companies who've gone through this process and are doing it really well, ones that we see either in the UK or elsewhere that you're like, actually, they've got this, in like, there's a really good model, because we like a bit of a cheat, don't we, that we can like, they're doing it well, I can see what they do. Is there anyone that you kind of look to that you'd recommend, or particular processes and practices, like if you're going to do one thing, have a look at this?
I would say, actually, this is where it's really important to, every company is individual, but you can benchmark and look at your peers, and actually that's really important as well. You know, if you can, go and visit or collaborate and see how other businesses are doing it. In terms of online, can you see, there's a great organisation called Be The Business that works specifically with SMEs to help improve their productivity, and they've got loads of great case studies that you can look at there. If you want to benchmark how you're performing, they've got a tool on there as well. So you can look at how productive your business is now and all of the different elements underneath that could maybe help you or point you in the right direction. In terms of great companies, the great companies are ones who don't sit on their laurels and say, yeah, we're done, we're great, we're productive, we're sitting back. So they're constantly evolving. So I wouldn't like to give the name of any one company, because you know, no one company's perfect. They can always improve.
Perfect. She's clearly got a career in politics here. Very diplomatic answer. That continuous innovation and not sitting back, I think, is absolutely key there. That's everything that I had down to ask you, but we'll open up if anyone else had any questions that they'd like to put to Nicola around productivity. Don't make them too hard for her, because I am putting her on the spot. And if anyone has any questions, we've got time for those now.
So it's to do with the mix of companies, perhaps, and you know, maybe they spill over into the wider area, the ecosystem as well, that maybe other pockets of Greater Manchester and the Northwest don't do. You know, so they obviously had lots of pharma around there. They've got a big life and pensions company there, so it's maybe the mix of companies, but then they've got all of the other companies in the ecosystem that are feeding into that. So that's maybe. And it was great to hear Chris talk earlier on about Innovate Greater Manchester and all of the initiatives that Bruntwood are doing with the wider Greater Manchester ecosystem to develop that further.
Fantastic. Yeah, really interesting to see that ecosystem develop, and again, something that we've seen change over the pandemic, because we're spending more time in the region of Greater Manchester as opposed to just within Manchester city centre is quite a change as to where we're physically based as well. Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, Ben.
I was just going to say, technology's obviously played a pretty big part recently. In terms of sort of future trends, what do you see as having a big impact over the next 5-10 years in terms of shifting products?
Ben's just going to keep it nice and easy for you there. Big trends, next 5 or 10 years, off we go.
There are some big trends, and ones that, as I said before, companies actually need to be mindful of the future. You've got to have short-term, medium-term, but really scenario plan and plan for the future. That's what great productive companies do. So AI and digital adoption, really big, need to be looking at that. You know, because it's not just the competitors in our region, in our country, it's globally, isn't it? We're in a global market. The move to net zero, the transition to net zero is absolutely something that everyone should be looking at and planning for, and how that impacts them. Even service companies, you know, where are you getting your energy for, how that's going to impact. Provides loads of opportunities as well. These aren't just risks, these are real opportunities to take advantage for. There are many others, but they're the two that I would really focus on.
Fantastic. Yes, so some really clear trends there, and trends that we've obviously seen and picked up over the course of today as well. So it'd be really interesting to see, now everyone's been inspired by all of those talks, what we bring back into our organisation. So thank you ever so much for joining us, and we'll all look forward to being a little bit more productive now.